Hello everyone, my name is Ollie. I'm a doctor living and working in England as part of the NHS. Welcome back. This video comes because lots of people have been writing in recently to ask about breaks and how breaks work as a junior doctor in the NHS. I can only assume this is happening because lots of you are about to join us working as new doctors in August, so very shortly. The key question basically being, what breaks am I entitled to? How do breaks work? And I think this is really good, to be clear, people taking ownership of what they are contractually entitled to and making sure they get it. That is wonderful behaviour. Now, fair warning that the information, the advice, etc. that I'm about to give comes from the 2016 Junior Doctor contract for England. I can only review and interpret the contract as it applies to England. So as far as this video goes, and for advice in general, if you are unsure and you want to know about your contract, I would always advise being part of a trade union and asking one of their representatives to go through it with you if you have a question. But to perhaps get to things very quickly, the answer to this question is quite simple, and we're going to take it verbatim from the Junior Doctor's contract, which will be linked in the description below. So looking on page 26, a doctor must receive at least one 30-minute paid break for a shift rostered to last more than 5 hours. B, a second 30-minute paid break for a shift rostered to last more than 9 hours. And C, a third 30-minute paid break for a night shift as described in paragraph 17 of Schedule 2, rostered to last 12 hours or more. The breaks described in paragraph 21 can be taken flexibly through the shift and should be evenly spaced where possible. These would normally be taken separately but may, if necessary, be combined into one longer break. Where the breaks are combined into one break, this must be taken as near as possible to the middle of the shift. No break should be taken within an hour of the shift commencing or held over to be taken at the end of the shift. Breaches of the break requirements are addressed in Schedule 5, paragraph 16. So that's the answer really, it's pretty basic. If your shift is due to last more than 5 hours, then you get 30 minutes. If that then becomes more than 9 hours, it becomes 60 minutes or two separate lots of 30 minutes, however you're going to take it. If you are taking a night shift, which by and large are rostered to be just over 12 hours or 12 and a half hours, then that becomes 90 minutes, so 3 lots of 30 minutes allocated for your break time. Now, as it specifically addresses in the contract, this is somewhat flexible. You can take the breaks as and when you are able, and can indeed combine them into one longer break if you want to, acknowledging that this should be done close to the middle if you're going to do that. You may simply find it more practical to combine them all together. On, say, a 12-hour long day, you could have a longer lunch break if your work day allows, say. But it's also really key to remember that element about not having breaks at the beginning or the end of the shift. This is to stop work piling up basically and stop your workplace forcing you to work all the way through. The point of a break is to be a break, and it should be used that way. The other really important thing to pay attention to here is that breaks are paid. This is quite unusual in the public sector and in healthcare specifically. If you were to look at the contracts of many of our colleagues working in healthcare and in the NHS, their working week would be 40 hours, so 8 hours a day, Monday to Friday, but they would be paid for 37.5 hours, and that is accounting for these 30-minute breaks once every day, which are unpaid. So why are doctors different in this regard? Why are doctors paid for their breaks? And the short answer to that is that you are expected to be contactable. Unlike other members of the team who can, in theory, say, I am on my break now, do not interrupt me, and then isolate themselves geographically in a break room or something, or have another staff member who is on the ward or in the hospital standing in for them. Doctors aren't able to do this. And before this video continues, I need to put my hands up and say, you know, colleagues, ward pharmacists, nurses, etc., I know that in reality, this is not how it always works. I completely understand that you are meant to be not contactable, and often you are, and often it is doctors that will be asking you to do things on your breaks. I'm very sorry about that. I wish it wasn't like that, but it's just that this is how the contracts are written. But basically, as a doctor, if you get bleeped, if you get called, whatever, during your break, you are expected to answer it. And especially if you're holding something like a cardiac arrest phone, you are attending that cardiac arrest whether you're on your break or not. And that is ultimately why doctors' breaks are paid. because you are expected to be contactable and you are expected to be interruptible during those breaks. And then lastly, let's think about missing breaks. The first is that missed breaks should be exception reported. I need to make a full other video on what exception reporting actually is and everything you need to be aware of. But essentially it means that your missed breaks will be flagged to the department and then will be discussed with someone senior. Regular problems getting your breaks again need to be escalated. Educational and clinical supervisor, local trade union representative, guardian of safe working. Your breaks are a contractual entitlement that other people had to fight for, so you can have them, so use them. And this is a last closing plea to my new colleagues that are going to be joining us in the NHS in August. Please, please, please go for your breaks. Pick a time when your shift starts. Ideally, communicate this to your colleagues as well and say, look, when it gets to 1 p.m, we are all taking half an hour and going for our breaks so we can have our lunch. Wards will sometimes be a bit funny about this and say, no, we need a prescriber on the ward at all times. No, you can't all go for your breaks at the same time. This is not true. That needs taking up with the consultants. That is not your problem. You are entitled to your breaks. Don't wait for the ward to get quiet. Don't wait for the work to slow down. There is an infinite amount of work, right? It's actually a big problem in the NHS that you may have noticed. Things will never slow down. Things will never get quiet. There will often never be a natural breaking point for taking your breaks. So pick a time at the beginning and make sure that you're taking your breaks. Ideally, the senior doctors will be watching out for you and making sure you're taking those breaks. But just in case they aren't, you've got to do it for yourselves. You're a working doctor, you're an employee. You don't just have the right to those breaks, you actually have an obligation to use them and make sure that you're well rested and not too frazzled for good clinical decision making. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Take care, and I will see you in another video. If you've got questions about how things work as a doctor working on the wards in the NHS, let me know down below. Take care.